Hello everyone, I'm the Nerdy Steve, and today I'm going to continue my conversation, talk about Zendikar Rising and, a little bit a retrospective on it. So let's just go into it and let's get going. So I first wanted to talk about the party tribes individually. So we'll start with clerics. And clerics were, I think, one of my favorite things in Zendikar. They were like pretty synergistic and cool to work with in limited. There were a lot of life gain payoffs, and a lot of these cards gain life. And so it played in a really cool space. I know like the draining and triggering off life gain is something that happens pretty common, but I felt there was like a really cool, really unique or cohesive element to the cleric's design in Zendikar, and it just hit kind of everything for me. It wasn't particularly competitive at a standard level, but there were, tier 2 decks that featured clerics and they popped up every now and then. And so, like, in that venue, I think it was successful also. So, overall, like, the clerics, I don't really have a lot to say about them, like, in a negative way. I think, like, maybe they could have, been pushed a little bit. Tabarak's Hope's Demise could have maybe been a little better. We saw Aura get played a lot, and Clerics of Life's Bond in Constructed, but the Demon Cleric just didn't really pan out, and maybe if it was a little better, the deck could have come together. But that's just a minor nitpick. Overall, I think the Clerics really hit it off and were really fantastic. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this class. Now, the warriors, unlike the clerics, were maybe a little less successful. I don't have the images here, but a lot of the warriors have been buffed on Magic Arena to make it a little more competitive and playable in Alchemy, and they still don't even see a lot of play there. And I don't really know what necessarily happened. It was something you could do in limited, right? But the limited aspect of it seemed to vary more on just the power level of the individual cards rather than the class being synergistic with itself. There was like also an equipment sub theme too for warriors, and it just like never really landed for me. Everything just felt a little too expensive or a little not impactful enough. And I don't know, what really happened. I don't have a Kiri up here, and we'll talk about Nahiri later. But like they're just, the equipment and warrior thing just didn't come together for me, and that's a shame. I love that stuff. I love equipment and Boros stuff. I think it's really cool. I think powerful equipment in these type of archetypes can really, make them play differently than other aggressive strategies because you get to use your mana in different and cool ways when you go to re-equip, and it just never got there for me. And I wish it was a little more powerful. And yeah, I don't know. What did you think about it? I'm gonna also talk about my favorite cards later, and there is an equipment that I really love in this set, but overall I feel like the Warriors, and with how they had to buff them later, they just didn't live up to their potential, and I don't really know why or what happened there. So rogues might be the most notorious tribe from this period, but it's really weird because it's not necessarily just thankful to the Zendikar cards. Soaring Thought Thief was part of a really powerful standard deck, along with Thieves Guild Enforcer, which was a 1 mana black flash creature that whenever a rogue entered the battlefield, you would mill 2 cards of your opponent. And that combined with Soaring Thought Thief and the landfall mill card, you could mill opponents very quickly. So it was part of a very highly competitive strategy along with other counter magic and recursive threats. And it was just a really good deck that people hated playing against. But other than that, if we just focus on the Zendikar limited aspect, again, the rogue strategy, it just didn't really come together. There was a sub theme of if your opponent had 8 or more cards, all your stuff would get a little better. And it was fine. It was like a nice threshold to meet and everything, but it just for me, it felt a little off, inconsistent, and it wasn't necessarily Mill isn't the most fun to play against, right? But also, the cards maybe felt a little less tribal and more individually powerful, even though they kind of helped each other. But like Soaring Thought Thief was kind of really good on its own, right? You didn't necessarily need other rogues to make it good, and that's what a lot of the other rogue cards felt. Even though they got better, it just didn't, unlike the cleric stuff, it didn't like build into something cool. And unlike the warrior stuff, even though that to me wasn't very successful, at least the warriors had a better identity with like what it wanted to do. It just didn't live up to that. And the rogues just kind of felt, it just like the trickiness aspect just didn't work well for me. I mean, I loved playing the rogue deck when it was in standard, but I don't know. And I don't know what I would have wanted, really, but it just Soaring Thought Thief was such a cool and very, very powerful card, and nothing really lived up to that expectation for me. Now, Wizards, very similarly to Warriors, got a lot of buffs in Alchemy, and I think that's gonna really set the standard for how we view this in retrospect. Again, it was fine in limited. I really like Chilling Trap as a limited card. There's a really, really very apparent sub-theme of casting instants and sorceries and wizards, and you do stuff. But again, it just wasn't particularly powerful enough to impact standard. It was kind of a thing in limited, but again, to me, it felt much more laborious to get together than maybe I would have liked. And I don't know again what really happened there. One of the cool things about the wizards in this set though was we talked about the modal face cards. So a lot of your lands were also instants and sorceries. And so that was a really, really cool and fun play pattern and thing that happened a lot in limited. And I think that part was very, very, very successful and very, very cool. But again, I think a lot of the cards, it was maybe a little too slow and not as impactful. Though it was a very, very good deck, and like I had a lot of success with it. If we look at Kaza Royal Chaser, this card just kind of didn't do anything at all. And when you have like, your rare tribal card, you kind of want it to like be maybe a little more impactful, and maybe it just it not everything's built for standard or limited, right? And this card just didn't do anything there, and I felt like the Wizards in general were just very, very, they didn't do much. And even again after the alchemy buffs, these cards, Umar Mystic sees a little play, but for the most part it's just eh. And I think that as I want to wrap this up in the four tribes, I think this is kind of like the biggest, miss for me with the set. How, again, each individual tribe was like the clerics were good, but like nothing really, really lived up to the cohesive hype I would have liked. And also because party was very underwhelming too. It's like, for me personally, so the individual tribal components were mostly underwhelming, and then party was a little underwhelming as well, in like both a limited and a constructed aspect. So I think like that makes the set feel a little, sour on my end. And I think I wonder what happened, or like if how purposeful that was, when you play in these new tribal spaces and things, like how far do you want to push them and everything, and I get that. And it just didn't land for me. And yeah. So I want to know what your thoughts on it, how you feel about these specific tribes. Again, I love all of this attempt and stuff at it, and I really, really like the cleric stuff. It just, you kind of wish these stuff were a little more relevant. So now that this was a return to Zendikar, right? Whenever you return to a plane in Magic, you can't get everything that you want, right? And so you're gonna leave out things that players might be looking forward to, or what they really, really want from it. And for me, there was kind of a lot of things going on in this Return to Zendikar that I felt I really wanted to see more of. So first, I'm going to talk about Forsaken Monument, which was in Zendikar Rising. This is kind of like a tribute to all the huge big Eldrazi that were defeated and killed off previously. And, this was kind of like a flashback or, a harken back to those cards being such an important part to this set's identity. And I feel like we got this one mythic from it, but I felt I wanted maybe a couple more cards to really show the devastation of the Eldrazi and to really, really, I don't know, give maybe that backwards compatibility because Forsaken Monument is great for, how it ties everything together. But I maybe would have liked maybe a couple more cards to just, have this realization of the world we are in and what has happened. And it seemed like it was kind of neglected and like everyone just forgot there was this huge war, right? And I would have liked to have seen a little more of that. It didn't have to be, this big thing. All the Eldrazi are gone, right? But, maybe one or two more cards where it could have at least, seen its effects, right? More and acknowledge that these big things aren't there. Because also the Eldrazi are very, very exciting, and returning to a world without, like, maybe the most exciting part of the set is, it's gonna leave some people disappointed, like it did for me, and I wish, like, there was at least more acknowledgement of that there. And again, Forsaken Monument kind of almost does that for me, but because it's a mythic, I would have liked maybe something to happen to show up a little more. And then I also have Drana's Emissary here, because I think Drana's Emissary is kind of indicative to me of kind of a lot of other things going on too. So it is a vampire cleric ally that has a life gain uh and life drain theme in it. So it's really, really cool how it fits with the clerics on, Zendikar right now. But it has a very specific creature type, and that is ally. And ally was something that was in the previous Zendikar sets that was absent here. And it was like, it's really, really weird when this set introduced allies, right? And then when we return to it and it's a big tribal component with party and everything, we were absent of like the tribal mechanic that this set was kind of known for. And I don't know what they could have done. For me, I would have, I don't, again, this is just going out there, but like initial thinking about like we could have had allies on more creatures, and then you know how they have changeling as a ability that makes it all creature types, right? Maybe you could have had ally, and then every ally had something like, like like a party mechanic where it counted as one of each creature type, so it could help party a lot while, like, being an owl. Like, it just seemed like a flavorful thing that could have happened, that could have, linked the ally mechanic through all of Zendikar while giving party a boost. Like, so it wouldn't be changeling, but it would be, partying, right? That's it. It would be partying. And then you could have, all these different cards that could have helped and help the different tribes a little more and help party a little more, and it would have been a lot more, moving pieces. And so maybe from a, like, development point of view, that would have been difficult to do. But to me, like, that would have really, really helped what I was something I was disappointed to not see, which was allies returning. But also, it would have added a much more cohesive to the party mechanic, and linked all the rogues, warriors, and wizards together. But again, that there's a lot to going on there, and but like I just wish they did something with allies, and I feel like they could have did something with allies while helping the mechanical playability of party. And then we also have quests and traps that were in the original Zendikar. And, I don't necessarily think they needed to, bring them back, but you do feel that they're missing. And there is, as we've gotten we've done more sets where at higher rarities or even at uncommon, they have been bringing back like poison and cycling at like very low rates in sets that like they the set otherwise doesn't mechanically care about. And I don't think it would be too difficult for them to, bring back one or two traps or one or two quests, kind of like as a cool, interesting enchantment at rarity, where they're at rare, where there's a lot of them going on, or a rare trap as like one or two of. And so it can, give players something that they're looking forward to while also still being true to the set's history. And like I just think that's a missing opportunity, and I hope it's something that they, possibly discover or do going on in the future. And then we also have Lumbering Falls here, and I do that bring that up because this set had the pathways, which are modal face cards that could be played on each side as like one color or another. And Lumbering Falls, the previous Zendikar sets had a lot of cool lands. We had fetch lands. There were, lands entered the battlefield and had really small effects. There were creature lands. Like, there were just a lot of lands in previous Zendikar sets. And Zendikar Rising just, like, barely had anything. And we did have the modal face cards, right? And obviously that is something, but like those were lands last and spells like kind of first. And I just wish we had a little more interesting one or two more land cycles to really like hone in on it. I know like maybe that would have been land overboard, but it just to me, I wish there was more land focus because again, the modal face cards were a really, really cool and interesting way to add more lands, to the set, but give them other things to do. But to me, I just like I want an actual land with something, not a spell that can become a land. And maybe that's semantics, and maybe that's like would have been too much. But for me, I think of Zendikar with a lot of cool lands, and the modal face cards are lands second and not lands first. But like that's just kind of a brief overview of, things I missed for me. And I was wondering if there was anything that you would have liked to see in the return or, stuff like that. And last but not least, I wanted to talk about the three planeswalkers in this set because the Zendikar Rising Planeswalkers to me were kind of like the least interesting and, the least competitive Planeswalkers in a set in a really, really long time. They, like, didn't really appeal to me in basically any way, shape, or form. And I tried them and I wanted them to work. And Nahiri got buffed in Alchemy and I tried playing with her then, but like the Nissa and Jace, it just, I don't know, to me it just they didn't land. And I wonder what happened here. Like, they just weren't powerful enough. Again, we have Nissa with Landfall and Jace with Kicker, right? So we have, like, two of the set abilities, but again, they weren't particularly great or wonderful. And I don't know. I don't know. It just, I love Planeswalkers. I know not a lot everyone does, but I love Planeswalkers. I love playing with them. I think they're cool. I think they do interesting things. And I think when I went in back to make this video and look at the Planeswalkers, I literally forgot that Nissa and Jace were in this set. Literally forgot. They were completely erased from my memory because I have not seen them since I played Limited, right? And that was just a really, really weird surprise. And I don't think it's, you know, if you forget what planeswalkers are in a set, that might mean something went off a little bit. And I think that's what happened here. And I don't know what could have been done to make them better. I mean, obviously, there are lots of things that could have been done to make them better. But it makes me a little sad, right? That, these planeswalkers just weren't good enough for, standard or any competitive environment. And when planeswalkers aren't like they aren't good enough and like they don't really fulfill a very specific niche very well, you know, it's just that's a lot of resources because they spend a lot of time on them and sometimes they miss and everything and that happens, right? That's not like a huge criticism, but it's just I wonder what happened here. Like maybe we're still in the we didn't want Oko to happen again, so let's make them a little worse than they need to be. But yeah, no, this the planeswalkers here. Planeswalkers are something I look forward to every single set, and these ones just missed, and that sucked, right? So I don't know. Let me know. Maybe you like these. Do you like these planeswalkers? I know the Jace like maybe was part like of this like combo deck, but that just never worked out. So I don't know. But we'll see. Maybe they will get better eventually, and I'll be eating my words. But right now, you know what I mean? Well, with all of that, this is my wrap up for Zendikar Rising. And so thank you for listening to it. Again, I felt that this video was maybe a little negative, and I didn't want to come across that. When you look back at things and be critical, there are positive things and there are like bad things, and I I love this set. Like I love everything in Magic, so I don't want it to come across as that, and I apologize if it seemed like I was too negative and didn't enjoy it. I liked a lot of things about this set, you know. There were a couple things I didn't talk about too. Like I didn't talk about there was a +1/+1 counters theme that again didn't really, work for me. And there were other things going on, but I think I hit a lot of the very big points and very big, things. So let me know if there was anything I missed that you would have liked to have seen. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video. But yeah, thank you for watching so much. This was really cool and fun to do because again, I talked about this. There are some cards in here that I forgot existed. And that's one of the cool things about Magic is like the discovery and rediscovery of stuff. And yeah, so if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. You can watch me at twitch.tv/thenerdysteve. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.